This happened to one of my best friends and I back in 2017 and I feel like it's worth sharing. Some backstory: my best friend, Elise, was dating this guy, Mark, in 2016. They broke up right as New Year's was approaching. I've known Elise for over a decade, but we didn't talk much while they were together. I ran into them once at a local coffee shop, hugged her and was chatting away while Mark stared at me in disgust, as if Elise wasn't allowed to talk to her friends. At the time, I thought nothing of it, assuming he was just antisocial. I had no idea he would go on to ruin an entire year of my life. It's really fuzzy as to how Mark got in contact with me specifically. I believe Elise posted about her breakup and I offered my support publicly, so he targeted me. It began on New Year's Eve. He started messaging me on Instagram over and over, threatening me. I was having a get-together with my then-boyfriend, two of my now ex-best friends and my now ex-best friend's boyfriend. I remember seeing my notifications blowing up and ignoring it. Everyone else seemed more concerned than I was. I brushed it off until late the next day. I checked my phone and I had dozens of DMs from Mark, as well as a few public posts that he tagged Elise and I in, calling us every name in the book and claiming I was the reason they broke up. I answered his DMs, asking why he was targeting me. That was the biggest mistake I ever made. After some angry messages from him, he blocked me and I thought it was over. I also had some missed calls from Elise, so I finally contacted her and asked what was going on. She frantically told me that Mark was a dangerous man and that he's been tormenting her since the day they became a couple. He would throw her around his apartment, leaving awful bruises that she sent me photos of. He would threaten to commit suicide if she left him and he even threw a hissy fit at a tattoo shop because they wouldn't tattoo Elise's first and middle name over his eyebrow. He got Crybaby instead. Fitting. Elise also informed me that Mark had went to jail before meeting her, for domestic abuse. He stabbed his ex-girlfriend in the leg and was only behind bars for a month before his dad bailed him out. With this new information, I was terrified. Elise told me where he lived and it was directly behind the coffee shop I mentioned earlier. I frequented that building and that part of town in general. That'll come into play later. I eventually calmed myself down and forgot about him. Until he got my phone number. I still don't know how he got it, but I woke up to 30+ messages from him one day and was horrified. His messages included threats to kill himself if I didn't help him and Elise get back together, threats to kill me, cries for help, him blocking my number and then unblocking it just to start the cycle all over again. I, being very naive and not wanting to be held responsible if he actually killed himself, did not block him. I asked him to leave me alone and if he wanted a number to a hotline where he could get some help, and he pretended to calm down for a bit. I gave him the number after many messages from him saying how much he missed Elise but also wanted to kill her. I told her immediately and pushed her to go to the police. She didn't. He conditioned her to believe that she would get in trouble if she reported him. This went on for months. I usually didn't respond, and when I did he seemed to chill out for a bit. I'm skipping ahead to a particular night where Elise and I were hanging out at my house. We were chatting away when my phone started to light up. I ignored it and kept talking because I didn't want to be rude. Elise peeked at my phone and said, "It's Mark. Look." Sure enough, Mark was bombing my phone with threats to slit his own throat because he knew Elise was at my house, calling us both cunts and claiming it would be our fault if he died that night. I didn't answer, but what came next is something that still haunts me to this day. He sent a video. Being curious, I clicked it, Elise watching over my shoulder. The video was of Mark's arm, a huge gash going down the middle. He was fake crying in the background saying, "You made me do this. I hate you both." He clenched his fist over and over again to make more blood gush out. Elise and I were so in shock that we watched the entire 50 seconds clip, despite how disturbing it was. I immediately called our local police station. Elise gave them his address and an officer came to my house to view the video and take down some notes. While we waited for the police to arrive, Mark posted the gruesome video to his Instagram and unblocked Elise and I just to tag us in it, claiming we told him to do it. Being a conventionally attractive guy with an e-boy aesthetic, the girls that swooned over him commented some pretty harsh things about us and kissed his ass like crazy. He was admitted to the hospital that night, and I wish they kept him. The harassment continued the second he got out. Time traveling a little more now to a few months later. Mark hadn't let up and Elise and I were still very close. We had a friend, Kayla, visiting from across the country. She also had a run-in online with Mark and hated him, but wasn't afraid of him. She was always carrying more than one weapon, some pepper spray, and she knew how to fight, so she suggested we go take a walk in the part of town he lived in. She wanted to visit that coffee shop, see some of our small businesses and then grab dinner at a pizzeria. Elise and I reluctantly agreed. We parked in front of the coffee shop, grabbed some drinks and started walking down the road. Within about 5 minutes, Mark drove by on his motorcycle. Elise and Kayla were immersed in conversation as I trailed behind. I looked up and made eye contact with Mark. Elise and Kayla noticed him as he was speeding off. Kayla assured us he wouldn't get anywhere near us with her around, so we kept walking. Mark began circling the block we were walking on with his bike. As we crossed to the next block, he switched to that block and circled it, too. On the third block was the pizza place. Their walls are all glass, all see-through, of course. We went in and were seated in the corner, right next to the glass. We sat there for about an hour and a half, eating, talking and sipping on soda. Mark circled the restaurant the entire time and we did our best to ignore him. Once we were finished and got up to leave, Mark sped off and we didn't see him again that evening. Some time passed and Mark began riding by Elise's house every night. Within a week, he started doing the same to me. I told my parents and my stepfather, who kept a close eye on our street. My mom always made sure our doors and windows were locked, shades were shut, etc. before going to bed. My dad would even do a nightly patrol where he would drive around my street for a few minutes on his way home from work, since he no longer lived there. He would call me and let me know that the coast was clear as he was leaving. I still woke up almost every night to the sound of his motorcycle engine revving outside of my house. We had no proof of this to show to the police because he was somehow doing this without a trace, so we didn't bother reporting it. At the end of 2017, Mark took his motorcycle and sped off to California to avoid the legal trouble he'd gotten into here. Elise and I were relieved to say the least. He still harassed us from time to time, but he never came back. We stopped hearing from him after a while and we thought nothing of it. Fast forward one last time to September of 2019. Elise and I were out and about, enjoying the sunshine, when she got a phone call. Mark was dead. He had died right after his calls and messages to us stopped. He got into it with his new drug dealer in Arizona and pissed them off enough for them to shoot him. He died instantly. He also caught 2 more domestic violence charges in California and Arizona and was on the run from his warrant. His father told everyone it was an accidental overdose because Mark was known for abusing Xanax and other miscellaneous drugs, but it was to cover his sociopathic son. I'm not sure if Mark's death was his karma or some higher being protecting us and all of the girls he's hurt before and would hurt in the future, but he's gone. We never have to worry about our safety because of him ever again. Although, seeing photos of him does still give me the creeps. Mark, I don't know where you are, but this world is better off without people like you. I am so glad you're gone. Let's never, ever, meet again. It all started a week or so before. I was having a late night bath and relaxing when I heard a noise. I didn't pay much attention to it as the house was very creaky anyway. It was a newly built house but you could tell the floorboards were either cheap or old. You could always tell when someone was about. Anyway, so I got out of my bath and wrapped my towel around me while I brushed my hair. I felt eyes on me and looked toward the frosted glass. As the bathroom was on the ground floor, the window looked straight towards the road. I saw 2 eyes looking at me with their hands around their face so they could get a good look in. I screamed, and then kind of laughed because I thought it was my partner being weird. I called his name and he came down the stairs. My legs went limp and I felt the blood leave my face. He ran outside but by the time he did they were gone. A few days after this incident, I was walking back from the store. As it was spring it wasn't too dark at 8 p.m. However, as I walked outside my house I saw 2 men looking through the window to the bathroom. I didn't want them to see where I lived so I walked slowly. This only caught their attention. They walked towards me and yelled stuff to me in a foreign language. They were looking at my body and saying something about culo, which I can only assume means ass. As they were taunting me, I did not strike a fight or flight response. Instead I froze. I wasn't sure what to say or do. They eventually left me alone. I gave them a finger and as they turned the corner from my house I went in quickly and closed the gate. The next day I woke up at around 10 a.m. I went downstairs as I usually did and realized I had left some food out. I put it in the fridge and went back upstairs. Then I heard a knock at the door. I went downstairs to see if it was the postman, as I wasn't expecting anyone, but there was no one at the door. I wanted to go back to sleep but I just couldn't. As previously mentioned, this house always had weird noises, so when I heard a loud thud I didn't put much thought into it. I then heard a smash moments later. I was annoyed with myself as I thought that the food I had just put in my fridge had smashed on the floor. I went downstairs to sort it out and I just saw a black foot through the patio windows. Someone was actively breaking in. All I saw was gloves and black boots before I screamed. My partner woke up again but we didn't see anything. We called the police and they took our statements and fingerprints, but nothing came of it. After that, several attempts to open our gate were made. People would hang out opposite the house. It was rented at the time, so I don't know if the person who lived there before us had created enemies. All I can say is I wish to never meet the creeps again. It all started when I first moved into my new place, last summer in 2019. I live with my landlord, her elderly mom, and my friend, Daisy. I also started a new job working night shifts at a hotel, so I was up most nights. I'm going to preface this story with some background information that would help the story make sense. Since my landlord knew her neighbors very well, as she lived in this house all her life and there is hardly any street parking, I was able to park my car in the vacant house's driveway, directly parallel across the street from our house. When I park my car, I can see the front of my place with my rear view mirrors. Our house is right in front of a very busy stop sign, so seeing/hearing traffic is something we all had to get used to. Daisy and I identify as women and are best friends that met in college. We've known each other for a few years at this point and did everything together. I remember it was a warm summer Thursday night. Daisy and I loved to leave the house past midnight, eat horrible fast food, roll the windows down and drive along the coast. It was around 1:45 a.m. as I finally pulled up to my parking spot. We sat in my car for a while, listening to music and finishing the last bit of our late-night munchies. My windows were up by this time, but we could hear a bigger car, like a diesel, approaching the stop sign. Of course, it was a stereotypical white van that prompted me to joke, "Daisy, look at that creepy white van." From my rearview mirror, the next thing we knew, we saw what looked like a thin man pick up his camera from the passenger side and took at least 5 pictures of the front of our house with the flash on. Daisy and I silently looked at each other in horror as the van sped off. The next day Daisy and I told our landlord about the incident and told us that this was not the first time one of her tenants reported this. Though, she brushed it off, despite us telling her that anyone taking pictures of her house that late at night did not have good intentions, really put Daisy and me on edge. Some time had passed as the coronavirus pandemic crept its way into the US towards the end of 2019. I was going to file a police report as I eventually caught most of the person's license plate after what it felt like months of investigating. At the beginning of February 2020, the van stopped coming, which caused me to think that the pandemic may have either gotten the person sick or affected them in some way. Although the person did not take any more pictures, as far as I saw, when the van drove by, it came from the same direction every time around 1 to 1:30 a.m. It would stop for a narrowly long amount of time, and then would speed off out of nowhere, as if the person was racing another car that was never there. I was going to file a police report as I eventually caught most of the person's license plate after what it felt like months of investigating. In the beginning of February 2020, the van stopped coming, which caused me to think that the pandemic may have either gotten the person sick or affected them in some way. I did stop investigating after 2 weeks of nothing. I still get very anxious if I hear a loud diesel-like vehicle drive by late at night. I don't know what the person wanted, why they were taking pictures of my landlord's house. Maybe once the shelter-in-place is lifted in my county, I might investigate again to ensure that the creep is gone. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like the video and subscribe.